the wife who lured her husband to his death, the Kathryn Restelli case. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. It started with a smile, a woman's smile that could light up a room, and a man who believed every word she said. Kathryn Restelli. To the outside world, she was perfect, elegant, charming, the kind of wife everyone envied. Her husband, Michael Restelli, was proud of her. He told his friends she was his blessing. They had the nice house, the nice car, the kind of life people in their small Pennsylvania town quietly admired. But behind closed doors, something darker was brewing. The morning it happened was quiet. One of those mornings that makes you think life is ordinary. But by nightfall, Michael Restelli would be dead, and his wife would be at the center of a story so twisted, even detectives struggled to understand it. Michael was a kind man, 43 years old, a hard-working contractor, the type of man who stayed late just to help a neighbor fix a fence. Everyone liked him. No enemies, no drama. He adored Kathryn. He believed in her, trusted her, spoiled her. Even when things got tough, he tried to keep their marriage alive. But Kathryn had other plans. It began small. A lie here, a secret there, little cracks that no one could see. Kathryn started taking longer trips, more girls' weekends, more unexplained credit card charges, more late-night phone calls that ended the second Michael walked into the room. He asked once, softly, "Who are you talking to?" She smiled. No one important, but someone was important, someone very important. By that summer, the Restellis' perfect life had started to crumble. Friends noticed the tension. Neighbors heard the arguments, but no one knew just how far things had gone. Michael was desperate to save their marriage. He told his sister, "She's pulling away from me, but I can fix it." He believed he could. He didn't know that Kathryn was already planning something much darker. Police would later piece together the truth. But that truth began weeks before the killing, when Kathryn met someone new, a man named Ryan Hall. Ryan wasn't like Michael. He was younger, wilder. He worked odd jobs and had a past that wasn't exactly clean. But Kathryn liked that. He made her feel alive again. He told her everything she wanted to hear. And soon, he was telling her something else, that they could be together. If only her husband wasn't in the way. First, Kathryn laughed it off. "Don't be crazy," she said. But Ryan wasn't joking. He began to plant the idea in her mind. What if he wasn't around anymore? Kathryn didn't answer, but she didn't say no. And that silence was the beginning of everything. By the first week of September, Kathryn's messages to Ryan were no longer playful. They were serious. They talked about money, about freedom, about what life would be like once it was over. Investigators would later find those texts, buried deep in her phone history. Dozens of them, cold, calculated. One read, "We have to make it look like an accident." Another, "He trusts me. I can get him where you need him." That message would become the key, because that's exactly what she did. She used Michael's trust as a weapon. On the night of September 18th, 2019, Kathryn made a phone call. Michael had been at his friend's house watching a football game. She told him her car had broken down near the old quarry, just outside of town. She sounded scared. "I need you," she said. "Please hurry." He didn't hesitate. He grabbed his keys and rushed out the door. That was the kind of man he was. He had no idea he was driving straight into a trap. The quarry road was empty that night, dark, narrow, and surrounded by trees. Michael's headlights cut through the silence as he slowed down, scanning for Kathryn's car. But there was no broken-down vehicle, only a white pickup truck parked on the side, and someone waiting in the shadows. At 9:47 p.m., a single gunshot echoed through the darkness. Then another, then silence. Michael's truck rolled a few feet before crashing into a ditch. By the time police arrived, he was gone, shot twice in the chest. No witnesses, no cameras, just a single pair of tire tracks and Kathryn's phone call to lead them there. She was devastated, or at least she played the part well. When officers arrived at her home, she cried on the porch. "My husband's dead? Oh my God!" She collapsed into the arms of a neighbor, but her tears came too easily. Her story didn't. She told police she had been home all night. She said she hadn't called him. But then detectives pulled her phone records, and the truth started to bleed through. There it was, a call at 9:32 p.m. to Michael's number, right before the murder. When detectives confronted her, Kathryn stumbled. "I might have called him," she said, but just to check in. But just to check in didn't explain why his phone pinged near the quarry, or why hers had too. Detectives knew. She'd lured him there. They just didn't know why yet. In the following days, the town of Clarion, Pennsylvania, was shaken. A husband killed, a wife acting strange. Rumors spread fast. Some said it was a robbery. Others whispered it was an affair gone wrong. But behind the whispers was one chilling truth. The police weren't buying her story. Detective Sean Milner, a veteran with 20 years on the force, was assigned the case. He'd seen his share of domestic homicides, but something about this one felt off. Too clean, too rehearsed. "She's lying," he said to his partner. "I can feel it." So they began to dig. Kathryn's phone was a goldmine. Thousands of texts, hundreds deleted but not gone forever. They recovered messages between Kathryn and Ryan Hall. They were intimate, explicit, and then sinister. Detectives read one text aloud in the station. It said, "He'll never see it coming." Another said, "I'll tell him to meet me. You just have to be ready." That was it. That was the setup. The detective's theory was forming. Kathryn lured her husband to the quarry. Ryan waited there. He pulled the trigger. And together they thought they could walk away free. But they were wrong. In the days after the murder, Kathryn met Ryan twice. Surveillance cameras caught them at a motel off Route 36. She looked calm. Too calm. The next morning, Ryan bought gas and cigarettes at a convenience store. He used Michael's credit card. A stupid mistake. But the kind of mistake that cracks a perfect plan wide open. Detectives moved fast. They tracked the card, pulled security footage, and within hours, identified Ryan Hall, a man with a record for assault and burglary, and now murder. When they brought him in, he folded fast. Ryan told them everything: the affair, the plan, the promise of a new life with Kathryn, and a share of the insurance money. She had promised him $250,000. Ryan's words painted the whole picture. Kathryn had been the mastermind. She used love as bait, deception as her weapon, and her husband's loyalty as the key to his death. When detectives arrested her, she didn't cry this time. She just stared straight ahead, cold, empty. As they read her rights, one officer said quietly, "She doesn't even look scared." She wasn't. Not yet. The news hit the town like a thunderclap. A beloved husband, a cold-blooded plan, and a wife who would rather see her husband dead than divorced. Neighbors couldn't believe it. "She seemed so nice," one woman said. They looked happy, but behind that smile was murder. Kathryn sat in a holding cell that night. The same calm expression, the same quiet stare. But when she thought no one was watching, she smiled. Detectives caught it on camera. Tiny smirk, the kind that chills you to the bone. Natchez, Mississippi. Spring, 1967. The smoke from the car bomb has faded, but the fear that never left. People still talk about the explosion in whispers, never loud enough for others to hear, never with names, because in Natchez, names can get you killed. The city looks peaceful on the surface. Church bells ring on Sunday. Kids ride bicycles down dusty streets. Men sit outside gas stations smoking, watching. But everyone knows, this is a town sitting on a powder keg. For generations, Natchez had been two cities living side by side, but never together. One white, one black, separated by streets, schools, churches, and fear. The civil rights movement was changing America. Marches, protests, new laws. But in Mississippi, change came with blood. Every step forward was answered with a cross burning in someone's yard. Every demand for equality was met with a bullet, a rope, or, like in Warless Jackson's case, a bomb. After the explosion, Black residents barely left their homes. Shades stayed drawn. Lights went off early. No one wanted to be the next name in the newspaper. Some families packed what they could and left town overnight. Those who stayed learned to move in silence, to trust no one, because in Natchez, even your neighbor could be wearing a hood on weekends. The White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan were everywhere, not just in dark forests or secret barns. They were in the sheriff's office, the police department, the factories, the grocery stores. They weren't hiding. They were the system, and that system had rules. If a black man spoke too loud, he disappeared. If he tried to vote, he lost his job. If he demanded equal pay, he might lose his life. That's the world Warless Jackson lived in. That's the world that killed him. After his murder, FBI agents set up a small base of operations in Natchez. They were met with hostility from the start. Anonymous phone calls, threats, graffiti on their cars. The message was clear: get out. But they stayed, because they had to. The FBI had already opened dozens of civil rights cases across Mississippi. Bombings, lynchings, shootings, all with one common thread: the Klan. But every time they built a case, it fell apart. Witnesses refused to testify. Jurors lied about their biases. Local law enforcement looked the other way. Justice was a ghost that never showed up. A confidential FBI memo from March 1967 warned, "The Natchez area remains one of the most volatile in the state. The White Knights maintain a strong presence. Local law enforcement shows no intention of cooperating." Agents began tapping phones, monitoring mail, sending informants into Klan meetings. They called it COINTELPRO, a secret counterintelligence program. The goal was to infiltrate, expose, and dismantle the Klan from within. But it was dangerous. Informants were discovered, beaten, or killed. Some vanished entirely. And still, the Klan grew bolder. They bombed homes. They burned churches. They targeted anyone connected to the NAACP. Meanwhile, the black community tried to hold itself together. Leaders met in secret. Meetings moved from churches to private homes. Doors were bolted shut, curtains drawn. They talked about boycotts, about self-defense, about how to survive when the law refused to protect them. Some joined the Deacons for Defense and Justice, an armed black self-defense group formed in Louisiana and spreading across the South. They carried shotguns, patrolled neighborhoods, and watched over NAACP members. For the first time, black families in Natchez had someone looking out for them. But it came at a cost. The Klan retaliated harder. Crosses burned almost nightly. Shots fired into windows. And no one arrested. Newspapers reported the tension like it was a war. Because it was. The Jackson Advocate ran the headline, "Bomb Terror Returns to Natchez. NAACP Vows to Stay." Reporters described a city on edge. A place where every knock on the door could be death. A place where people counted shadows before they slept. Warless murder hit the local factory workers hardest. He had worked among them for years. He was quiet, reliable, didn't drink, didn't curse, didn't talk politics. But he did take that promotion. And in 1967 Mississippi, that was enough to mark him. Some of the white workers grumbled openly. They said the company was bowing to the N***************. They said someone should teach him a lesson. The FBI heard those comments later from confidential sources. But no one would put it in writing. No one would stand up in court. Because if you accused a Klansman, you became the next victim. The FBI questioned more than 100 people. Workers, neighbors, supervisors. Everyone claimed ignorance. Everyone feared retaliation. One man quietly told an agent, "Everybody knows who did it, but you'll never get him. Not here." That was the pattern of the time. The Klan ruled through silence. They didn't have to kill everyone. Just enough to keep the rest afraid. And it wasn't just Natchez. The entire South was burning. In Jackson, civil rights leader Medgar Evers had been shot in his driveway just 4 years earlier. In Meridian, 3 young activists, Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner, were murdered by Klansmen in 1964. Bombings in Birmingham had killed little girls in a church basement. Now, Natchez had its own name on that growing list. Warless Jackson, a husband, a father, a symbol. At night, the sound of trucks rolling down dirt roads sent people diving to the floor. Any truck could be carrying men in white robes and masks. Any truck could be the one to stop outside your house. Fathers took turns staying awake, guarding their homes with rifles. Children learned to recognize the smell of gasoline and gun oil. This was life under siege, and the Klan loved it that way. They wanted black citizens afraid to work, to vote, to live freely. They wanted them to know that every sunrise could bring another bombing. And for a while it worked. But something unexpected happened after Warless' death. Instead of destroying the community, it hardened them. The NAACP refused to close. Local pastors preached louder. Meetings grew bigger. They said, "They can kill the man, but not the movement." That message began to spread. Through whispers, through church songs, through the courage of those who refused to leave. In April 1967, the FBI's field office submitted a secret report to Washington. It listed 13 potential suspects connected to the bombing. Among them, several employees of Armstrong Tire and known members of the White Knights of the KKK. But every lead ended in a dead end. Evidence disappeared. Witnesses backed out. Local authorities refused to help. One agent wrote in frustration, "The climate in Natchez makes prosecution impossible. We are dealing with a conspiracy of silence." That phrase, a conspiracy of silence, became the case's unofficial name. Behind the scenes, the FBI considered moving their investigation into unofficial territory. They began recruiting informants directly inside the Klan. One of those informants, years later, would claim he heard the names of the bombers. He said they bragged about blowing that N***** sky high. But his testimony was never made public. Why? Because exposing him would have gotten him killed. And so again, the truth was buried under fear. Decades later, documents would reveal that the FBI knew far more than they ever said. Names, dates, connections between Warless' murder and other bombings across the state. But in 1967, the agency was stretched thin. Mississippi had become a battlefield. The list of unsolved, racially motivated killings grew longer by the week. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It was a cold Friday night in Pennsylvania, March 15, 1996, the night that changed everything. The streetlights flickered outside the Restelli home. The air was still, too still. Inside, Kathryn was pacing. Her hands trembled as she stared at the clock. 8:47 p.m. She had made the call. The plan was in motion. There was no turning back now. For weeks, Kathryn had been weaving her trap. Text messages, secret phone calls, late-night drives to meet a man named Tony Vance. Tony wasn't her husband. He was her lover, and he was dangerous. They'd met months earlier at a bar just outside town. Kathryn told him she was trapped in a loveless marriage, that her husband, Mark, controlled her, watched her every move. Tony believed her, or maybe he didn't care. He was infatuated. She was beautiful, confident, a woman who could make a man do things he never imagined. When she whispered the plan to him, Tony hesitated. She said it calmly, almost like she was asking him to take out the trash. "I just need him gone." Tony stared at her. "Gone?" Kathryn's lips curled slightly. "Forever." At first, Tony thought she was joking. But when she mentioned the money, everything changed. Insurance, savings, the house. Mark had a life insurance policy worth $350,000. If he died, Kathryn got it all. And she promised Tony a cut. Now, weeks later, Tony had brought in another man. Someone who didn't ask questions. A man who'd done things like this before. His name was Carl Dixon, a ghost in the criminal world. A man who preferred to be paid in cash and silence. That night, Kathryn's role was simple. Get Mark to leave the house. Bring him to the old quarry road. The rest they'd handle. But even for her, it wasn't easy. Mark had started to grow suspicious. He'd noticed her mood swings. The late-night texts she said were from work. Earlier that day, he tried to talk to her. "Kat, are you okay? You've been distant lately." She smiled, that same sweet, hollow smile. "Just tired, Mark." "I'm fine." She wasn't fine. She was calculating. Every detail had to be perfect. At 8:52 p.m., she picked up her phone. Tony's number flashed on the screen. She answered in a whisper. "They're ready," Tony said. Kathryn swallowed hard. "I'll bring him there in 15 minutes. She hung up, took a deep breath. Then she called out to Mark. "Can you come with me? The car's making that noise again. I just want to show you what I mean." Mark sighed but smiled. "Now? It's late." "It'll take 5 minutes," she said. Her voice was soft, almost pleading. He hesitated, then nodded. "All right, let's go." That was it. That single, innocent decision sealed his fate. The drive was quiet. Mark drove. Kathryn sat beside him, pretending to scroll through her phone. She looked calm on the outside, but inside, her heart was racing. Her hands were clammy. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She knew what was coming. They turned down the old quarry road. The headlights cut through the darkness. No cars, no houses, just trees. Mark slowed down. "This is where you heard the noise?" Kathryn nodded. "Yeah, right here." He parked, stepped out. The gravel crunched beneath his shoes. Kathryn stayed in the car. Her breath quickened. She glanced at the side mirror. Then 2 shadows moved out from the trees. Tony and Carl, both wearing dark hoodies, both armed. Mark didn't even have time to turn around. A sharp crack split the air. A single gunshot. Kathryn flinched. She didn't scream. She didn't move. Mark fell to the ground, motionless. Tony approached the car, his face pale, his hands shaking. "It's done," he muttered. Kathryn stared at him. Her lips parted slightly. There was no emotion, no tears, just a cold silence. "Get rid of him," she said quietly. Carl nodded. They dragged Mark's body toward the woods. The sound of leaves crunching faded into the night. Kathryn turned away. She couldn't watch, or maybe she didn't want to. Hours later, her phone buzzed. A message from Tony. "It's done. He won't be found for a while." Kathryn didn't reply. She just deleted the message and went to bed. When police knocked on her door the next morning, she was already in character. The worried wife, tearful, shaking, telling officers her husband hadn't come home. She called friends, family, anyone who would listen. He said he was just checking the car. "I don't know what happened." Her performance was flawless. Even the detectives felt sorry for her. First, they launched a search. Drones, dogs, volunteers combing through the fields and woods. For 3 days, nothing. Then a fisherman spotted something floating near the quarry. It was Mark, cold, pale, gone. His skull had a single bullet wound, execution style. Detectives knew this wasn't random. This was personal. They questioned Kathryn again. This time, their tone was sharper. "Where were you that night?" "At home," she said quickly. "Anyone who can confirm that?" She hesitated. "My friend Melissa. I called her that night." Detectives checked phone records. There was no call, not even a missed one. A crack in her story, the first of many. Meanwhile, Tony was unraveling. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. He kept replaying the gunshot in his mind. The way Mark fell, the way Kathryn didn't even blink. One night, he showed up at a bar, drunk and shaking. He told a friend everything. "I think she's gonna set me up," he whispered. She said she deleted the texts. But what if she didn't? His friend listened in disbelief, and then called the police. That's when everything began to crumble. Detectives got a warrant. They pulled phone records, text messages, bank transactions. It was all there. Kathryn's calls to Tony, her Google searches for undetectable poisons, and how to remove gun residue. A $5,000 cash withdrawal days before the murder. The trap she'd set for Mark had now turned on her. When detectives showed her the evidence, she broke character for the first time. Her face hardened. Her eyes went cold. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but the evidence spoke louder than she ever could. They arrested Tony first. He confessed within 48 hours, told them everything, the affair, the plan, the promise of money, and then he said the words that would seal Kathryn's fate. "She told me to kill him." The community was stunned. No one believed it at first. Kathryn, the loving wife, the charity volunteer, a killer? But as the truth spread, people remembered things. Her strange behavior, her cold reactions, the way she smiled at the funeral, almost like she was relieved. Reporters flooded the town. Headlines exploded across the state. Wife accused of masterminding husband's murder. Her trial became a media circus. Cameras outside the courthouse. Commentators debating her every word. But before the trial even began, one thing became clear: the story wasn't over. Because Kathryn wasn't going down without a fight. And she had one last trick up her sleeve. The news broke like thunder. Local woman arrested for husband's murder. Everyone in town was talking. The whispers followed her name. Kathryn Restelli, the beautiful wife, the grieving widow, now accused killer. Reporters stood outside the courthouse. Neighbors peeked through their curtains. Even the church she once attended quietly removed her name from the bulletin. But Kathryn? She didn't crumble. She didn't cry. She smiled. Even in handcuffs, she smiled. Detective Harris was the lead investigator. Quiet man. Methodical. He didn't buy Kathryn's act from day one. He watched her during every interview. How she controlled her breathing. How she tilted her head and blinked at just the right moments. How she performed grief like she was reading from a script. "She's not reacting," he told his partner. "She's pretending to react." Now that Tony had confessed, Harris knew she was the puppeteer. But he needed proof strong enough to crush her defense. So he went digging. They started with the phone records. Hundreds of calls between Kathryn and Tony. Dozens in the weeks before the murder. Most late at night. All deleted from Kathryn's phone, but not from Tony's. Then came the texts. Coded but clear enough. "The plan will work. Make sure it's quick. I'll be there." It was all there. Evidence of a setup. Evidence of intent. Then the financial records arrived. 2 weeks before Mark's death, Kathryn had taken out a second insurance policy. This time, just in her name. A $500,000 policy. No one knew about it. Not even Mark. Detective Harris felt a chill. She hadn't acted on impulse. This was strategy. Cold. Calculated. While Harris built the case, Kathryn was playing her own game. In jail, she charmed the guards. She smiled at reporters. She even gave a phone interview. "I loved my husband," she said softly. "I'm being framed. Tony was obsessed with me. He killed Mark because I wouldn't leave him." Her voice shook, just enough to sound believable. She painted herself as the victim. A woman trapped between a jealous lover and a suspicious husband. The public started to split. Some believed her. Some hated her. Everyone watched her. Tony Vance sat in an interrogation room across town. His eyes were bloodshot. His hands twitched. The guilt was eating him alive. He'd confessed to the shooting. He told detectives about the money. But when they asked for messages, he hesitated. He'd deleted most of them, but not all. Police recovered fragments from his old phone. One text read, "He trusts me. It'll be easy." That text wasn't from Tony. It was from Kathryn. Detectives confronted her again. They laid the evidence on the table. Photos, call logs, text messages. Kathryn stared at the pile like it was meaningless. Then she laughed. "Tony's a liar," she said. "He's obsessed. He probably sent those texts to himself." Her lawyer nodded beside her. "No hard proof those came from my client's device," he said confidently. Harris kept calm. He knew she'd twist everything. But he also knew one thing she didn't. The FBI had joined the case. They were analyzing deleted data from her laptop. Emails, drafts, search history. and what they found made even the seasoned agents go silent. 3 weeks before the murder, Kathryn had searched. Can a car accident hide a gunshot? How to erase texts permanently? How long does gunshot residue stay on clothes? Then, a note she'd written in a hidden folder. After this, I'll finally be free. That was it. That was her motive, written in her own words. Freedom. Freedom from marriage. From debt. From the man who trusted her too much. The prosecution built their case like a house of glass and steel. Every piece of evidence fit perfectly. Every lie Kathryn told cracked her reflection a little more. Meanwhile, her lawyer doubled down. He told reporters, "This is a witch hunt. There's no murder weapon tied to my client. No video. No fingerprints." He wasn't wrong. No direct physical evidence tied Kathryn to the scene. But the circumstantial evidence painted a picture darker than anything the jury had ever seen. Then came the trial. October 1997. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, family members, curious locals who wanted to see the Black Widow for themselves. Kathryn entered the courtroom in a light blue suit, hair curled, pearl earrings. She looked more like a teacher than a murderer. The cameras loved her. The jurors couldn't stop watching her. And she knew it. The prosecution opened strong. They called Tony to the stand. He looked exhausted, haunted. He told the story in brutal detail. How Kathryn had seduced him. How she promised him money. How she begged him to make it clean. Then he said it again. She told me to kill her husband. Kathryn didn't flinch. She didn't look at him. She just scribbled something on her notepad and smiled faintly. The prosecutor turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a woman consumed by grief. This is a woman consumed by greed." Next came Detective Harris. He walked the jury through the timeline. The texts, the insurance, the deleted emails, the note that said she wanted to be free. Piece by piece, he stripped away the illusion Kathryn had built. When he was done, he looked straight at her. "You thought you could plan the perfect crime," he said quietly. "But perfect crimes don't exist." Then it was Kathryn's turn. The defense called her to the stand. The courtroom went silent. She took a deep breath, tilted her head slightly, and began to cry. At least it looked like crying. "Mark was my soulmate," she said softly. "Tony twisted everything. He wanted me to leave my husband, and when I said no, he killed him. Then he blamed me." She paused, let her voice crack just enough. "He said if I didn't lie for him, he'd hurt me." Her lawyer nodded. The jurors watched closely. For a moment, just a moment, some looked like they believed her. She was good, too good. But then the prosecutor approached the stand. "Mrs. Restelli," he said, "do you recognize this?" He held up a printed email, her handwriting in digital form. The subject line read, "We'll be rich soon." The email was addressed to Tony. Kathryn's eyes widened. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The prosecutor leaned closer. "You wrote that 2 days before your husband's murder." The courtroom gasped. Kathryn's lawyer stood. "Objection!" But the damage was done. Over the next few days, the defense tried to recover. They attacked Tony's credibility, said he was the real killer, said he planted evidence. But the jury wasn't buying it anymore. The web Kathryn had spun had finally snapped. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Kathryn Restelli, guilty of first-degree murder." Kathryn froze. No tears this time. No act. Just a long, empty stare. The judge spoke firmly. "You lured your husband to his death for greed. You will spend the rest of your life behind bars. Life without parole." Outside, the crowd erupted. Reporters rushed to file their stories. Neighbors whispered, "Did you see her face when they said guilty?" Detective Harris watched from a distance. He'd seen hundreds of cases, but this one stayed with him. Maybe because Kathryn had fooled so many. Maybe because she'd smiled through it all. "She was playing a part," he said quietly. And the curtain finally fell. Weeks later, in her prison cell, Kathryn sat alone. No cameras now. No makeup. No soft voice or careful smiles. Just silence. She picked up a pen and wrote a letter. "To Tony," it began. "You ruined everything." The gates slammed shut behind her. The sound echoed through the hallway. Cold. Final. Permanent. Kathryn Restelli was now inmate number 98142. No more pearl earrings. No designer dresses. No cameras. Just gray walls. Metal bars. And time. Time to think. Time to remember. Time to realize that the perfect life she tried to build was gone forever. The first night, she didn't sleep. The lights flickered overhead. The air smelled of bleach and fear. She lay on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. Her hands trembled, not from guilt, from anger. They took everything from her. Her home, her name, her control. Kathryn wasn't used to losing. She was used to manipulating, to bending people, to smiling her way out of trouble. But here, her charm meant nothing. The guards didn't care. The inmates didn't care. No one did. Weeks passed. She kept to herself. She read, wrote letters, and watched others from a distance. Some women whispered about her. Others avoided her completely. "She's the one who had her husband killed," they'd say. The rich lady who thought she was smarter than everyone. Kathryn ignored them, or at least pretended to. But the truth? She hated it. Every word, every stare, every reminder that she'd lost the game. Then came the interviews. Journalists wanted to talk. Documentary crews wrote letters. Producers from true crime shows reached out. Everyone wanted her side. At first, she refused. She said nothing, but the silence didn't last. Kathryn loved attention. She craved it, even behind bars. So she agreed to one. A journalist named Diane Lewis came to visit. Her show focused on women who killed their partners. Kathryn saw it as an opportunity. Another stage, another role to play. The interview began in a small room with 2 cameras. Kathryn sat straight, her hands folded. Her voice calm, composed. "Do you still claim you're innocent?" Diane asked. Kathryn smiled faintly. "I didn't kill my husband," she said softly. "I loved him, but the police needed someone to blame. And Tony, he gave them what they wanted." Her tone was perfect, sincere, measured. Diane leaned forward. "But Tony said you planned everything." Kathryn looked down, pretending to fight tears. "Tony was obsessed with me. He wanted me to leave Mark. I wouldn't," he snapped. "And now I'm here, paying for his mistake." A pause. Then she looked up at the camera. "I'm not a monster." The audience watching at home couldn't look away. But Diane wasn't convinced. After the interview, she reviewed every frame. The blinking pattern, the phrasing, the tiny smile when she mentioned Mark's death. It wasn't grief. It was control. A woman still trying to direct the scene, even from a prison chair. Diane said later, she didn't feel sorrow. She felt annoyance that she got caught. Kathryn's story spread again. TV specials, podcasts, online forums. People debated whether she was guilty or framed. But every discussion brought her name back into the light, exactly where she wanted it. Some called her the Black Widow of Pennsylvania. Others, the wife who lured her husband to his death. Either way, she was famous again, and she loved it. In prison, she adapted. She started teaching GED classes, led a reading group, volunteered to help new inmates adjust. The staff saw her as a model prisoner, polite, helpful, soft-spoken. But inmates saw something else. A manipulator, a woman who always got her way. She traded favors for protection, stories for cigarettes, information for trust. And slowly, quietly, she built power. Even here, she had followers. 10 years passed. The world moved on. New crimes filled the headlines. But for the Restelli family, the pain never faded. Mark's sister, Elaine, visited his grave every week. She still brought flowers, still talked to him. "Justice was done," she'd whisper. "But it doesn't feel like peace." She sometimes got letters from Kathryn. They came every few years, always written in neat, perfect handwriting. The first line was always the same. "Elaine, I think about Mark every day. Then came the denial, the excuses, the twisting of truth. By the third letter, Elaine stopped reading. She threw them away, but she kept one, the last one. It said, "If you ever want to know the truth, visit me." Elaine never did. Back in prison, Kathryn turned 50. Her hair streaked with gray, her face lined with quiet bitterness. But her mind still sharp, still dangerous. One night, she wrote something in her notebook, a confession of sorts. Not to murder, not directly, but to motive. She wrote, "Love is just control. Once you stop controlling it, you lose it." Those words would later appear in a documentary years later. They chilled everyone who heard them, because they said everything she refused to say out loud. By her 20th year in prison, a parole review came up automatically. Not for release, she wasn't eligible, but for assessment. A psychologist interviewed her for over 6 hours. The report was confidential until it leaked. The psychologist wrote, "Inmate Restelli exhibits strong narcissistic traits. She lacks empathy, externalizes blame, and sees herself as the victim of an unjust system. She shows no remorse for the crime itself, only regret for the consequences. In simple terms, she wasn't sorry. Not for what she did, only for getting caught." Outside prison walls, Diane Lewis, the journalist who first interviewed her, released a follow-up documentary titled The Mind of Kathryn Restelli. It aired nationwide. The final scene replayed one of Kathryn's quotes, "You can't trust love. It changes people." Then, Diane's narration cut in, "Maybe she's right. Maybe love changed her into a killer." The episode went viral. Millions watched. Kathryn became infamous all over again. Letters flooded the prison mailroom. Some from people offering sympathy. Some from men writing love letters. Yes, love letters. They called her misunderstood, wrongfully convicted, a victim of a broken system. Kathryn read every one and responded to some. She knew how to keep them hooked, even from a cell. Then one day a letter arrived that was different. It was from a young law student named Erin Collins. She wanted to review Kathryn's case for her thesis. Kathryn saw opportunity. Someone new to charm. Someone young, impressionable. They began writing weekly. Kathryn told Erin everything about Mark, about Tony, about her innocence. She made herself sound vulnerable, lonely, wronged. Erin believed her, at least at first. She visited the prison twice. The first time, she was nervous. The second time, fascinated. Kathryn smiled during every meeting. "You remind me of me when I was young," she said. But Erin was smarter than she thought. One night, Erin requested Kathryn's full trial transcripts. She read every line, every phone record, every witness statement. Then she found something Kathryn had never mentioned, an email draft saved hours before the murder. The same email the prosecutor had shown the jury. "We'll be rich soon." Erin realized Kathryn had been lying to her too, just like everyone else. She stopped writing, stopped visiting. Kathryn noticed. Her letters went unanswered. For the first time in years, she felt something she couldn't manipulate. Rejection. The next few years were quiet. No more documentaries. No more interviews. Kathryn's influence inside the prison began to fade. New inmates didn't know her story. The old ones didn't care. She grew thinner, quieter, colder. The fire in her eyes dimmed, but never went out. In 2023, 30 years after the murder, Diane Lewis visited again. Older now, wiser, still haunted by the case. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.